Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Saturday Night. The new Jason Reitman feature is out. The 90 minutes leading up to the very first episode of Saturday Night Live in October 1975. Excited to talk about this movie. We're also going to take a look at The Apprentice. The divisive Donald Trump biopic is out. Not just about Trump, though. Also about Roy Cohn, his lawyer. We took a look at it. We're going to tell you whether or not it's worth your time. We're going to talk about some trailers, some upcoming things. This new trailer for Osgood Perkins' new movie, The Monkey, is out. I got a new trailer for Wallace and Gromit we're going to take a look at. Sounds lame, but hey, they haven't had one of those movies out since 2005. All right, take a break. It's for kids. It's good stuff. Before we get to all that, we need to get to the news. Before we get to the news, we need to talk about a bit of pre-show chat here. Andy added something to the outline that I know very little about. This movie, maybe tell you what. Andy added this. I watched the trailer for it, and knowing nothing about it, hopped on the call and was like, "Andy, we got to talk about this movie. I totally want to talk about this." Andy, what is this feature?
So I recently rewatched 1995's Lord of Illusions, which is a Clive Barker property. Now, this is a movie I haven't seen this in almost 30 years. I saw it sometime in the 90s, and I remember it being real scary and kind of very different and out there, and I definitely shouldn't have been watching it as like a 12-year-old or whatever it was. And I've always wanted to rewatch it, and it's on HBO Max. So I finally sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do it. And it was kind of a never meet your heroes moment because it doesn't really hold up. In a lot of ways, like it has this really kind of I think the premise, the plot is interesting, but the execution doesn't really work. But it's there's this cult out in the desert in California somewhere, and there's this cult leader that everyone's kind of rallying around, and he like can do magic, and he is kind of bound and killed by some of his followers, bound in this creepy iron mask and buried somewhere in the desert. Jump forward 10 years, and this is a world where these people are performing real magic, and they're feigning being illusionists, like a David Copperfield-esque kind of character, and they're doing illusions for money and fame and show, but they're actually performing real magic, and they're afraid this person that they buried long ago is going to come back. I haven't even gotten to the main story. So the great Scott Bakula, famed TV actor, plays Harry D'Amore, who it's kind of a neo-noir thing where he's investigating something in LA, gets wrapped up in all this. Famke Janssen is in this, who would of course play Jean Grey in the X-Men films, and after this she was in the GoldenEye, the Bond movie. But man, a lot of this doesn't hold up. Like it's too long for what it is. Mostly it's the effects are just, man, it's some real bad early CGI. I think the whole point is like, the Lord of Illusions is supposed to, make you see things that aren't there and all that kind of stuff. Just, it's bad. And it's too long. But there are some pretty gnarly scenes. There is a lot of violence, and, that like the creepy cult leader is pretty effective. Like there's some saving grace in there.
Yeah, for a picture that came out in 95, it's got a lot going for it. A, the trailer's got like the classic 90s in a world, like movie theater guy voice, which is great. B, like you got some early talent, Bakula's fun, and Famke Janssen's a good time. And C, like there's a lot of goofy effects in here. Like there's some early CGI in a couple of these shots. I see fire and brimstone. There's a shot of a baboon. They had an animal handler on set. And most importantly, like it's a goofy Clive Barker horror. And I've already been watching some of those this season. Rewatched Hellraiser, great time. Rewatched Scream, great time. I need to go take a dip on Red Eye, early Cillian Murphy, right? And Rachel McAdams is a good time. Like he made a lot of these, and they did not all work. And the lesser ones, I think, have definitely fallen off. But Lord of Illusions, like surprisingly, looks like a good time. There's a Red Band trailer on YouTube that was shown on the live stream. It's in like 320p. It is so low res, but I'm impressed. I was impressed enough just by the 2-minute trailer to be like, you know what? We should totally open the show and talk about this. I love this. So wouldn't recommend Lord of Illusions?
I think if you're a horror head, it's worth checking out. There are some good scenes and some good themes. This is based on part of his book series called The Book of Blood, which is a series of short stories. This is one of the short stories, and they're apparently very different from the written version. It just kind of, and it introduces this character, Harry D'Amore, that's a detective that will show up in a number of his works. Kind of reminds me of Angel Heart, which I haven't actually seen, but it's a similar thing as a detective investigating the occult. Kind of thing. I think it's worth a watch. There's some scenes that I still remember 30 years later. Like Spoilers for a really old movie, but
Yeah.
the person that they are afraid is going to come back from the dead does, and it's kind of an amazing scene when he kind of comes back to life. There's a great shot of where like you kind of dive into his body and swim around, and you see like all his organs inflating and stuff. There's some really good scenes in there, but you can tell like the studio got a hold of it and like Hollywooded it out a whole lot. But it's worth checking out at least once, I think.
When magic is real, death is only an illusion. Lord of Illusions on HBO Max. Dude, I know. I'm like, man, and like the marketing, it looks so good. Like, love it. Love old Barker. With that, we should get into the news. Our first story this week, Henry Cavill is going to be in Voltron for Amazon. One more nerd property for our former Superman. Andy, what do you know about this?
He's signing on to the Voltron movie. That's all we kind of know. Details are under wraps. We don't know anything about plot or who else is in this. Voltron, of course, was an 80s TV show from Japan about 5 robots who come together to kind of like Power Rangers, create this giant mega robot called Voltron. Was real popular in the 80s, bringing it back like they're doing with a lot of millennial properties, bringing it back to the screen. No details yet, though.
Yeah. Let's remember last time we saw Cavill was in an audience cheering cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine. He had a quick summer appearance in there. He was also in Argyle earlier this year, which was, it was okay. We reviewed it here on the show. You can check out our review of that from earlier this year. Also, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, also reviewed that from Guy Ritchie. That was a good time. So I think people are excited to see him in another nerd property, right? He did Superman, he did The Witcher. He's got some stuff going on with Warhammer. I think he's supposed to be in a property over there. Why not? Why wouldn't the man fit into Voltron? Do you think he's going to play a hero or a villain? That's my question. Because I think in the Voltron crew, one of them, at least in some versions, one of those guys is older. So he could be like the leader of the crew, or he could be our surprise, like bad, charismatic villain with his own mecha, right? His own robot.
I feel he's probably squarely in the leader hero side of this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. He's also doing Highlander. Good God, this man can't get away from it. He's the ultimate hot nerd, right? Like Cavill's just got it on lock. Good for him. Great for him. Love that for him. What's next? From Disney, Freakier Friday, the live action, and Lilo and Stitch, the live action, is set to come out in 2025. We have some official release dates for these guys. I think one of these is mostly anticipated, right? And then the other one I'm not so sure about. Andy, what do you know about these?
So Freakier Friday, which the original Freaky Friday came out in 2004. It's a body swap comedy with the same stars, Lindsay Lohan and I'm blanking. Who's the other?
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Thank you.
I would have forgotten Lindsay Lohan. I'm impressed you got her and forgot Jamie Lee Curtis. Scream Queen.
That was a body swap comedy from 2004. It's coming. They're doing it again 20 years later. But the family's in different situations. Lindsay Lohan's character is getting, I think, remarried. She has a child of her own, but will also be gaining a stepdaughter, and so that poses new challenges of like a mixed family. So that'll be fun. That'll be a good update thing. I can't believe it's been 20 years since that one, and they recreated the kind of iconic shot from that with their 20-year-old older selves. And the Lilo and Stitch movie is coming out. It's going to be a May contender, going to go up against Mission Impossible 8, so it's good counter programming. And they're bringing back the original voice actor for the who's Chris Sanders, who voiced the cartoon version. So he'll be back in this, and we'll see what that's like. The live action stuff has kind of been waning. We'll wait to see how Mufasa does.
Yeah, dude, I think. Look, I don't want to say Mufasa is going to be a bomb. Like, I don't think it's going to be a bomb. But just like every metric points to this movie not doing good, other than the fact that it's a Lion King sequel from Disney. That's the one thing that seems to be its saving grace. Like, it's a musical about the lion's dad from the last movie. Songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, I don't know, man. And it's coming out opposite Sonic 3, the coolest looking movie in the whole world. I'm not so sure. But hey, Chris Sanders fans can look forward to not only seeing him in Lilo and Stitch, but also his previous work, Wild Robot. We reviewed that on the show. He directed that movie. That's his movie. Lilo and Stitch was also his movie, but he opted not to do the live action remake. Can't really blame him. He's still getting a check for doing the voice, right? And I'm sure the IP like that, I think that comes from him. They're his original designs. So like he's getting his money worth, double dipping, a little movie at DreamWorks, then do a little movie at Disney. Like I think my man's doing good. As for Freakier Friday, like nostalgia, it's nostalgia bait, right? People are gonna love it. They're gonna turn out. It's gonna be a great time. You're right. They got Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan doing like the Macaulay Culkin Home Alone face on the thing, like screaming, and so seems like a banger, I think, for Disney. What do you think? Is Mufasa gonna make $1 billion? Where you at?
It's so hard to tell with these Disney properties now. They just they're so hot and cold. It could come out and be a big hit, and I think if it's good, it'll probably make a lot of money. If it's real bad, word of mouth will kill it. Sonic probably won't put as big of a fight as we would like it to, but it's just brand. I mean, Disney's got the brand recognition.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, tell you what. Speaking of word of mouth, this is exciting. Ready or Not 2 is in the works with Samara Weaving and Radio Silence returning. This is a big story for horror heads out there, especially if you saw Ready or Not 1. We did see it, covered it on the show. We have a review out there for it. You can check it out. Man, this is not bad news. I think this is going to be a good sequel.
Right. We don't have details on this project yet, other than Samara Weaving returning. To remind you, the event of the first film, she comes to like a family dinner where she's the bride's going to marry into this wealthy family, and then they have to play this game before the festivities can start. And turns out there's this ancient family curse, and it turns into the most dangerous game where she is hunted by the family. To ward off this ancient curse, and she has to survive through her own wits and lots of blood and guts, and she obviously does because she's returning for the second one. But that movie's a lot of fun. It was a lot of good little film making. We really enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to the sequel for sure.
Yeah. Also looking forward to seeing another horror from Radio Silence. The directing duo formerly did Scream 5 and 6, and then also did Abigail. That's their most recent movie. Vampire ballerina movie. And I remember we didn't cover Abigail on the show. We did cover Scream 5 and 6 and the original Ready or Not, but the thing people said mostly about Abigail is that the marketing stepped on it because it gives away that the girl is a vampire, and that's apparently like the functional twist at the end of Act 1. Like that's kind of the big surprise for the rest of the movie. Bit of a bummer to see that stepped on, but I'm excited to see Weaving doing more. Her getting iced at the opening of Scream 6 is such a bummer. She's kind of like the Drew Barrymore girl in that movie. Like she comes in early and it's like, oh yeah, so Samara Weaving. Like glad to see she's doing it. And then she just gets axed right away. An honor, I think, in the Scream franchise, but she needs more work. And I'm glad to see she's doing more stuff. Like it always bums me out when I see her in like a smaller part. She's great and she should get to do more stuff. Seems like a layup from all of them. I'm guessing our like ancient family deal with the devil will extend to some kind of larger punishment because the family didn't end up getting her at the end of Ready or Not. That'll be kind of the thing. There'll be some kind of follow-up or somebody else with a deck of cards. I don't know. I just remember that scene of like the family members popping like balloons when they end up not making it by dawn, which is like including the children, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Wild movie.
Rumors that Melissa Barrera might sign on to it as well, so that would be exciting.
Oh, dude. Yeah, come on. Yeah, Spyglass loses her for Scream, and then suddenly she's like appearing in Radio Silence's next picture. Hilarious. And good for her. Yeah, like why not? All are welcome. Everybody in to the Ready or Not 2 tent. I'm down. Like that first movie's a banger. And I think with word of mouth, I think people turn out for this one. It might even end up doing better. I think a lot of those Blumhouse teens that go see horror movies on the weekend, like whatever's out, I think they would tell their friends, hey, Ready or Not 1 was good. You should totally go see this one, but we'll see. Regarding horror, a bit of a story from the box office this week. Terrifier 3 is killing it. Art the Clown, just slaying up and down the aisles. And we didn't see it, but it seems like a lot of people are. Andy, what do you know about this?
All right, there's a new clown prince of crime in town, and it's not the Joker. Terrifier 3 is terrifying, tearing up the box office with $18 million, way above its $2 million budget. This is becoming a slasher classic. Like I said, I've seen the first one. It's kind of, I think it's kind of boring, not my thing, but there's definitely an audience for it. It's doing really well. Joker 2 got bumped down to fifth place with $7 million. There's a separate story where that movie could lose as much as $150 million for Warner Brothers. which is kind of their own fault because why did you give us a $200 million budget? But they're reeling from that. Meanwhile, other highlights: The Wild Robot continues to do well on its way to $150 million. Beetlejuice passed 400 million up to 420, doing really well. I'm trying to see if there was anything new, and of course, this what we're going to talk about here, Briarcliff's The Apprentice. It's a very small opening. It's a small indie film that they this film is so small, like the company that agreed to distribute it had to do a Kickstarter to like be able to do marketing. But that came in at a small 1.6. We'll see if it kind of has like, it's supposed to be an awards contender.
Yeah, boo. How could the election year movie not do good during an election year? Like, what are the odds? We'll talk about The Apprentice towards the end of the show, for what it's worth. For me, talking smack up here, fun movie. Stick around for the review. I'm glad Wild Robot's doing good. I know we had talked about previous that like it was maybe going to get stepped on from Transformers 1 coming out a couple weeks prior. Paramount didn't seem to do very good marketing with that. Didn't really hit. Wild Robot, I think, already got cleared for a sequel, which is nuts. It seems inevitable we're getting Beetlejuice 3, right? Which is just going to be his name 3 times. Won't say it on this podcast for, film canon reasons, you understand. But outside of that, like, it would assume that that's what we're going to end up getting. Meanwhile, Joker having what Hollywood Reporter calls the worst decline in history for a comic book movie, which is hilarious. And one of the biggest among any film. I did want to talk about Terrifier 3's numbers and maybe a bit of goosing coming from people buying Wild Robot tickets that I was hearing about. But regarding Joker's like kind of incredible run here, this incredible flop, Andy, any comment on what might be the worst fall off in comic book film history?
I think it's unfair to call this a comic book movie because it's really, really not. It's not like a Marvel or a DC movie that's got action and stuff, and even something more subversive like Logan. Like it's barely. It's like comic book adjacent. It's kind of about two characters loosely. We were talking about one of the things about Joker. There is like no mention of like Gotham City and Batman, because in the first Joker we had references to Thomas Wayne. We see young Bruce Wayne and Alfred. There's lots of references to the larger Batman universe, and there's none of that in the second Joker movie. It's just Todd Phillips is trying to do something completely different, and it's not really a comic book movie. I feel like that's kind of unfair to say, but it is still losing a whole lot of money.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I know James Gunn got on Twitter last weekend and somebody said, why doesn't Joker 2 open with the DC Universe like logo? And he literally said, it's not a DC Universe movie. Like, they didn't collaborate a lot with us. Todd Phillips kind of did his own thing, and that's all well and good. What I'd want to know from Phillips' camp is, why did it cost $200 million? What cost so much money? Like, was it writers for Phoenix and Gaga? Like, what cost so much money in this movie? Like, the musical numbers are fine. The sets are pretty big, I think. Lots of gels. They sure use a lot of colored lights, and the soundtrack's fun, but $200 million just seems extreme, dude. Oppenheimer costs like, what, 50 or 60? And like, so I was just reading about... Go ahead.
I know that a lot of it was salary, like $50 million of that is salary.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix walked away with $20 million. Todd Phillips also $20 million. Lady Gaga with $12 million. She's not even in the movie that much too. So like,
shh, people haven't seen it. Yeah, no, she's not in the movie that much.
So, I mean, a lot of it was like the talent price tag was huge.
Yeah, well, that'll do it. Okay, one more thing before we jump into Saturday night, because I'm really looking forward to talking about this movie. I saw this thing on Twitter over the weekend that people were saying that Terrifier 3 is actually doing better than it seems, but on paper, Wild Robot is getting a bump in this movie because teens and young kids that can't get into an R-rated feature are buying tickets for Wild Robot and then walking into Terrifier 3. And it's a wild metric. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody try to report on this being accurate, but I think Hollywood Reporter was the one that put this out. Andy, hot takes? Is that some kind of metric that people can start to measure the box office against? Like, oh, Wild Robot, the recent kids film is getting a bump because of this insane horror feature. Like, what do you think?
I feel like that's kind of impossible to measure because, yeah, how are you going to know that they're sneaking into something else? That seems real dubious, and that is a classic film going technique, though, to go and buy a ticket to something you're not supposed to see via a kids movie. But like I said, pretty hard to measure, and that doesn't sound very reliable to me.
Yeah, of course. Not to mention like assigned seating, which we all do in movie theaters now. Like you don't have anybody coming out of Terrifier 3 going, "Hey, there's like 3 kids in the seats we booked." I don't know. I don't know. Like you can't. It just seems so bogus. Like what data could you draw from that? Like those are totally made up numbers. Those are just budgeted guess. Yeah, I'm sure some people are doing that, but like there's no way of knowing for sure. There's no way you can book. Like, DreamWorks should not be changing plans on Wild Robot or Wild Robot 2 because Terrifier 3 was goosing their numbers. That didn't hold water. I don't believe it. But that's my opinion from a movie podcaster. For now, we need to get to our first feature film of the episode. Spent far too long talking about it. It's time to start talking about it. Andy's been taking the summer on this one. Andy, please take it away.
Saturday Night. So this is the latest film from Jason Reitman, an awards player, possibly. This is about the initial episode of Saturday Night Live way back in 1975 when a young producer, Lorne Michaels, played by Gabriell Labelle, has to put together this improv show that there's never been anything like it. And the show is, a disaster. The actors are feuding. The crew is revolting. The skits aren't done, or the skits aren't ready. Like the sound isn't working. The lights are going out. And meanwhile, there's also all this kind of Hollywood business stuff going on in the background about, is this show going to go on? Do we just put on reruns of the Tonight Show? There's some sort of contract conflict that's allowing the show to even happen right now. And only one man, Lorne Michaels, can put it together. That's the basic premise. There's a lot of chaos. There's a big cast who impersonate a lot of classic comedians, people like Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Gilda Radner, George Carlin. You get to see, that young version kind of before they were famous versions of this film. It also stars the great Cooper Hoffman, Corey Michael Smith, Rachel Sennott, Willem Dafoe, J.K. Simmons. So it's got a big cast, a lot of action, a lot going on in this. Zach, what'd you think?
So Saturday Night is kind of a challenging premise. It's easy on paper. It's the 90 minutes leading up to the very first episode of Saturday Night Live in October 1975, right? Like, Jason Reitman said in interviews, the cast says it like it's an easy one-line elevator pitch. But the thing you have to ask yourself is, does an audience care when we know that SNL has a nearly 50-year broadcast history at this stage? We understand the absolute institution this show has become, so are people going to care about the 90 minutes leading into that first episode? What's going to draw you? What's going to work? And the answer is a who's who of personalities, whether or not these are the characters being played, right? Like a young Chevy Chase, young Dan Aykroyd, or the young up-and-comers playing them in the cast, like Gabriell Labelle coming hot off the set of Snack Shack and Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, right? Cooper Hoffman, Rachel Sennot. These younger folks we haven't even seen before playing things like young Chevy Chase. Like, you get a really fun variety of people who are already present in 1975 versus like up-and-coming talent alongside a very faithful recreation of Rockefeller Center, like reportedly down to the studs. They got like early blueprints of what the set looked like back in the day. They had their camera crew come in and take classes on like how to run stuff from 1975. You have these incredible long take sequences with whip pans and crashes, all building up in this boiler pot of a film that's going to lead to a live broadcast that television's never seen before. Ultimately, it ends up being a really fun ride, albeit a little long. So believe it or not, even though it's 90 minutes, like it does feel like you kind of already, the conclusion I think is presupposed. We all know where it's headed. We know SNL is going to work out, but it's still a really fun time all the way down. Good music, exciting pace. Andy, what do you think of Saturday Night?
I wasn't as warm on it. I think it's very well made. Like technically, like there's a lot of really long one take shots that probably took tons of rehearsal. And again, the whip pans, like whipping around, and there's so much going on. It's like, oh, we got to get our actors in costume. We got to get our writers finishing the sketch. We got to get past the censor board. We got to meet with the suits in one. And it kind of, Gabriell Labelle's just walking through the whole studio, all Studio 54 constantly. And so that stuff works really well. I think my issue with it is that, there's all these conflicts of things that aren't working, and that it just kind of magically wraps up. Like, Lorne Michaels doesn't really solve any problems. They just kind of in a very Disney way just kind of get solved by the end of it. So that part isn't as compelling. It would have been nice to see, like, his, producer management hat comes on and he makes miracles happen, and he really doesn't. It is cool to see younger versions of these famous comedians. At the same time, I feel like this movie's like 20 years too late. Like, if you're under 30, you're not gonna know who any of these people. A lot of these comedians are dead, not just old. Like, Chevy Chase is old, probably should be dead because he's terrible. But like,
all right, okay, that might be true, but all right,
okay. But like, George Carlin is dead, Gilda Radner's dead, John Belushi's dead, like Jim Henson is dead. He's the young version of him, and so it's I don't know who this movie's for, because it seems like you should have made SNL 25 or SNL 30, something like that.
Yeah, it's a funny kind of audience it's casting out for here, because our cast is very young cast throughout the film. Very few older players in it. Willem Dafoe, J.K. Simmons are both fantastic in it, both have small parts. Otherwise, like, it's a very young cast and crew, mostly under the age of 30. But meanwhile, like, your audience that you're trying to draw into this movie is probably older. Most of the people in my theater were over the age of 50. So you have to like use younger people to draw them in under the guise of, hey, this is an older cast. Like, this is SNL back in the day. This is 75. And for that, I do want to say, I think it works great. There was this group of like 4 older folks in the row in front of me who I was watching this at AMC. As the film got going, we're watching all the trailers in front of the movie. By the end of the trailers, they were like, what movie are we watching again? We've been here a half hour. Like, well, funny. They're older. They don't go to the movies all that often. They get through the whole film. They're laughing. They're having a good time. And then right as soon as credits hit and the light goes up, they all get their phones out and start Googling Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, looking at these new people, and they're like, oh yeah, look at, like, they're comparing and like looking at like these people they remember and these bits. And like, I think that is like absolutely the best case scenario for an audience member coming out of Saturday night. You want to have a thriving, like, renewed interest in like the energy of Saturday Night Live. And like, that's what I think this movie does well. It's funny, it's chaotic, and Andy's right. Like, it's kind of a breakless journey all the way to the end. And it opens with this great quote from Lorne Michaels that I just Googled so I could get it right. And here it is. Quote, "The show doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30. And that's kind of the perfect mantra for Saturday night, because by the time you get to 11:30, it's not really ready. Like, my God, they have a lot that's not ready, and a lot that doesn't work, and a lot that's chaotic. But somehow, like, I do think it manages to get a little bit of that fairy dust from Saturday Night Live and take you right back to those moments preceding this thing nobody knows. This great scene in an elevator right in the open when Cooper Hoffman, he's kind of this producer for Lorne Michaels. He's working the deal between Lorne Michaels, the show creator, and NBC, who's got advertisers and wants to get Polaroid on and wants to know what the show's about. And he tells Lorne, he says, what is this show? Do you even know what it is? And Lorne says, of course I do. He says, okay, why don't you tell me what it is? And he doesn't have an answer. Like, he doesn't really know. And so the movie's got to try to thread you, the audience member, through the through the eye of the needle of, we don't really know what this thing is, but it's going to happen, while knowing that you, the audience member, already know what it is. It's Saturday Night. You've seen it before. Interesting challenge, thoughtful, and I think it works. And I should stop talking about why it works thematically and start talking about why it works structurally, because I feel like I've spent too much time in here.
I think Lorne Michaels does a great job of, he just always knows what to say to, like, get out of a situation, or to kind of placate. He's constantly spinning plates, placating people. Be like, people, we want 4 minutes for our sketch, but we only get 2. And right, and he's dealing with the talent, the writers, the producers, all of it. And he's kind of masterfully does it. And yeah, he's like, no, there's never been a show like that. I think that's something that kind of bothers me. Is like, it's easy to say in hindsight that, yes, of course we knew it was going to be a brilliant show because it's been on for 50 years, but it's like, we can only say that in hindsight. Like, you probably had no idea what it was or wasn't going to be in the moment.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that Gabriell Labelle does well as Michaels, because I know people have described Michaels in the past as kind of an asshole, and like, He is that in this movie. And he's also passionate, and he clearly has this vision for like this idea of a television show that is so different and so divergent than what's currently on TV that he can't even really describe it to people. It's sketches and comedy and musical acts and a live rock show and Muppets and a puppet show and satire. It's all of these things. He's trying to get past the censors, this like wonderful young woman who's almost like a nun, who's an older woman who's like, well, what does this mean? I don't know what this word means. And writers who are laughing at everybody and don't take anybody serious, and NBC heads who like want to know what the show's going to be. And poor Jim Henson, who's just trying to get his Muppets on TV, right? And wants to be taken seriously as an act. And got a young Billy Crystal appears in this movie. Like the amount of like talent that flows through it is palpable. And Lorne consistently takes the opportunity when somebody asks him for like a moment. They're like, hey, Lorne, can I talk to you for a second? He's like, yep, totally. Even though he's spinning 10 plates and is so busy doing other stuff. And they say, hey, I'm really concerned about this. And he goes, okay, yeah, we'll do something with that. And then does nothing about it. It's like that old Mel Brooks thing with I think it was Blazing Saddles, when the studio told Brooks a lot, hey, you gotta back this off. You can't do this. You can't do that. And he was like, yep, absolutely. And then just didn't do it. And that's kind of Lorne Michaels' whole shtick. And that makes him kind of a bad guy, I think, to a lot of people. But it also gets the show on, right? Like it's not ready when it's ready. It's ready because it's 11:30 and it's time to go. You know, like it's happening now. We're doing the show. Like concentrating that chaos and trying to capture it in a bottle for 90 minutes is, I think, a good exercise, and it works. And it works partly because of its cast, who we should probably get into talking about here.
Yeah, we have, again, a kind of a who's who of up-and-coming 70s comedian, Corey Michael Smith, who we saw in last year's May-December, actually.
Yeah.
Plays Chevy Chase, very accurate in the like the voice, the great Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd. And these are, people playing, and these are not actors I'm familiar with. They seem a bunch of just a lot of unknowns, but that nailed the look. A man named Matt Wood plays John Belushi. I mean, they're nailing these very kind of difficult and iconic roles. Someone plays Andy Kaufman as well. So it's a who's who. My issue, it's a who's who of like your parents' favorite comedians, your grandparents' favorite comedians.
Right. Yeah, our the characters they're playing are definitely a little bit old hat. Excuse me. I shall say Andy Kaufman, played by Nicholas Braun, who also plays Jim Henson in the movie. He just plays both roles. Reportedly, Braun went on Jimmy Fallon. He talked about how originally Kaufman was going to be played by Benny Safdie, and Safdie backed out because he's directing another feature. And so Jason Reitman was like, hey, can you just play both? They're both kind of these odd characters. Like, just do both. It'll be fine. Works out fine. They're both small parts that work great. But the movie's also got like a lot of the anxiety of the cast in there, which is important. Like, Lamorne Morris plays Garrett Morris in the feature. He's the only black player in the opening episode of SNL. And he figures out pretty quickly that like he is uniquely alone in the role, and he's playing like a burglar and a pimp in the first episode. He's like, yo, what are we doing here? Like, wait a second, like I'm a playwright. I've written bigger stuff. I shouldn't be doing this. Meanwhile, like John Belushi, who we all know for SNL, does not want to do SNL. He thinks of himself more as a Marlon Brando type. He's like, I should be doing something great. I should be doing something fantastic with my work. Chevy Chase is already getting hawked by studio heads for other opportunities. They're like, you're too good for this show, kid. You should be going to something else. Willem Dafoe playing that studio head is like this delightful old man who knows everything and supports Michaels, but meanwhile really needs the advertiser's support is ultimately what he wants, right? Like that's who he really cares about. And then J.K. Simmons is old Uncle Milton Berle, who is a surprise appearance as a television veteran, right? Who thinks he knows better than everybody, for sure. Especially this new Lorne Michaels character, right? Like he doesn't know what he's about. Like you get a lot of like these conflicting kind of storylines that give you a lot of room to give you a lot of fat to chew on, I guess, while Lorne Michaels is running around frantically trying to keep the show going. And you've got like a lighting rig falling from the ceiling in one scene. A fire breaks out. Like you've got people who are leaving. You get somebody who's like ODing in their cast room. Like a lot of stuff going on in Saturday Night, I think. And like that makes for a fun trip down. Admittedly, something I heard from a Twitter mutual, which I think is true, like very male oriented, which is accurate for Saturday Night Live. Like the women do not get a lot of attention. I know Jane Curtin's got a good scene when she's talking to Garrett Morris. I know Gilda Radner's got a couple of scenes, but like they ultimately don't get as much attention as the male players, which is kind of a bummer and unfortunately true to history, I think. And that kind of sucks. Fortunately, SNL's come around in time. We now have people like Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, like and a lot of wonderful female comedians. Wish they'd got a little bit more screen time, but for what it's worth, I think Saturday Night manages to stick the landing for what it's going for. I think it's a good time, but it's a little gimmicky. Yeah, like it's a bit of a gimmick on its face, and I think Reitman had a lot of fun with it. But I'm looking forward to him getting back to kind of original screenplays again. You know, I say that being that he did like the last Ghostbusters movie,
3.
which is not original. But hear me out. That's the best Ghostbusters movie we've had in a while. And then he bailed on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire because it seemed like he saw the writing on the wall. Like, oh God, they're just doing another one of these. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of talent in Saturday Night, I guess is what I'm saying.
There definitely is. I think the actors are doing a really great job of embodying these people, you know, not doing impressions or caricatures. For me, a lot of these B plots don't really work. The one with Lamont Morris is interesting because it touches on, like, he's basically a token character and he plays all these like kind of negative black stereotypes, but it doesn't really explore that much more. It introduces that issue, but then that's kind of it. Again, we have the studio stuff happening in the background. Will the show be picked up or not? Will Chevy Chase go on to lead the Tonight Show? There's some weird relationship dynamics between Gabriell Labelle and Rachel Sennott, who's his wife, but is also with Dan Aykroyd. And so there's a question about what to use on her credit names on the show. That stuff isn't really well handled. I don't think. It kind of wraps up really quickly and doesn't really address a lot of it. But I feel like the main plot is solid.
Yeah, me too. Any other thoughts for final recommendations, Andy? I kind of want to talk about the emotional exposition at the end of the movie, but I feel like it's low-key spoilers, so I'll just avoid it. Anything else you want to talk about before we jump into it?
No, I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Saturday Night?
I would say save it for streaming. I think it is a fun watch. It's good to see this kind of chaotic show come together. We have great talent from Gabriell Labelle, Rachel Sennott, and company. All these people embodying these 70s legends of acting and comedy. I don't think it's a perfect film. I know this is being poised as an awards contender. There might get some acting stuff. To me, it's just not as focused as it kind of should be. Everything kind of just magically comes together. Like the conflicts aren't clear and they aren't very well, like the denouement isn't really earned, in my opinion. It is kind of fascinating to see the acting though. So I would say save it for streaming.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, great streamer. If you are hanging out on a Saturday and you see this on Netflix or HBO or something, pop it on, 90 minutes. You'll have a good time. It's a lot of cool people that come through it. No big rush to go see it in the theater. There's nothing particularly large or cinematic about what's happening for Saturday Night. I mean, functionally, it's a film kind of designed around TV anyway, but it's a good time. I'm looking forward to seeing what a lot of these younger cast members go on to do. I made a joke tweet about one of them going on to play an X-Men, but like almost assuredly a couple of these folks will. Like, there's some real talent running through this movie, and it's good stuff. I almost wish the ones that mattered got more screen time, but in classic SNL fashion, like, you go with what you got, right? Like, you overstuff it and you try to make it work where you can, and we give you the time you've got, and if you can't use it, you can't. And I don't know. I think there's something unique about this movie. I don't mind it in Reitman's filmography. I think it's a good entry. And that's Saturday Night. And with that, we should move into our next segment of the episode. We're talking about some upcoming trailers. I'm going to be taking the first one here. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park.
So our first film is The Order. This is a new Justin Kurzel picture, director of Macbeth starring Michael Fassbender, and also Assassin's Creed starring Michael Fassbender, which sounds bad, but hear me out. The Order stars Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult in what appears to be, I'm going to say, the 70s in the Pacific Northwest, when a series of bank heists and robberies have been going down in local communities. Folks are scared. They don't know what's going on. And a local investigator, played by Jude Law, starts looking into it, and he realizes, hey, I don't think these are just criminals. I think these are like white supremacists. I think these are a bunch of like, freak hick people out here that like have a racial message they're trying to spread with like crime and chaos. And these hicks are in part led by Nicholas Hoult, who plays this like young, wiry white kid who's like going on a crime spree because by God, they've believed something about the world and they're going to tell people. Kind of an odd looking feature that looks like it's got some action. I mean, Jude Law's good. Nicholas Holt's good. Order could be a good time. What do you think, Andy?
I think this trailer is really kind of stunning. It kind of is a background for things that would eventually result in things like the Ruby Ridge that happened in that region in the late 80s. Again, it's kind of a bit of this cat and mouse game between Jude Law, he's the FBI guy, Nicholas Holt's character, who's in this like white supremacist group. Ty Sheridan's also in it. He's also one of these sheriff's orders, and so that they're dealing with these bank robberies that are very like stick 'em up, hold, not very violent. But then also this larger goal of this movement.
Yeah, I think I don't know. Order could be a good time. Comes out December 5th, which God, when I saw this trailer, I thought, oh my God, another December 2024 feature, dude. There's way too many movies coming out this holiday season. I don't know how we're gonna keep up with it, but we will. Hey, we'll do our best. Your off script boys will stay on top of it. What's next, Andy?
So we also took a look at The Monkey, which is a new feature from Osgood Perkins, who of course did Longlegs from last summer, and this is his very next film, not 6 months later. And this is based off a Stephen King short story about two brothers who discover this toy monkey in like the attic of their home, and then people around them start dying in kind of vicious, mysterious ways. And there's a great kind of voiceover that says, evil things visit bad people and good people, like something to that extent. But it looks to have kind of a lighthearted message. It's like kind of a more lighthearted version of Final Destination. I'm definitely into whatever this is, and this comes out February 21st, so or early next year.
I tell you what, I don't think much of the premise. I think a Stephen King short can be a really good time. No complaints there. But I mean, we've all seen like the monkey with the clanging cymbals, like little toy, right? Battery operated thing. Like not wildly intimidating. In fact, recently we saw the monkey as a cursed object, a bit of a Easter egg in Oddity, the Shudder movie that we covered on the show. There's one of those hanging out in the background in a couple of scenes. But let me tell you, Osgood Perkins looks like he's bringing visuals that are going to be really exciting. Lots of like straight on one point perspective, big shadows, big lights, like bunch of weird creepy tone. That's all the stuff that works best in Longlegs. Like those are the things that work best in that movie. Like it's not the performances per se. It's not even really the plot. It's the feeling of it. And the monkey looks like it feels creepy. So I think he's a good pick for it. When does this come out?
February 21st.
Oh yeah. All right. Perfect. We'll keep an eye out for the monkey. We'll definitely cover it here on the show. Another one I want to talk about, January 3rd release, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. Listen, we don't exactly do Wallace and Gromit movies on this show. I have got to figure out a way to talk about this one. The reason we don't do them is because there hadn't been one out, right? Last Wallace and Gromit movie came out in like 2005, Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But now we're back. Aardman, Nick Park, and new director, what is his name? I'll get it in a second. Are returning to the franchise to do a new feature starring the titular Wallace and Gromit. Our young inventors are getting a little too in love with their inventions. Too reliable, right? They're leaning on them too much. Wallace specifically has this smart gnome that he uses for everything. Probably not unlike a smartphone, I would imagine. But Gromit wants to kind of show him, hey, we need to be self-reliable. You can't rely on technology for everything. And then right then, an old foe from their past reappears. Feathers McGraw, or whatever his name is, the penguin from The Wrong Trousers, right? With that incredible train sequence at the end of it. He's back, and he is the villain of our feature. Movie's out January 3rd. And I mean, I'll be watching it for sure. I don't know if I can get Andy to watch it. But Andy, what do you think of the trailer for Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul?
I mean, it looks fun. These Wallace and Gromit features, the whole property is kind of a classic of British TV and animation, and films have been very popular. Been around since the late 80s. I'm sure this will be great for the family, and also tolerable by adults.
Yeah, that director, I was going to say, co-directed by Merlin Crossingham, and I should say it's the first Wallace and Gromit feature without Peter Sallis, who's the voice of Wallace. So he passed away, I think, in 2017. New voice is Ben Whitehead, who sounds just like him, and nobody would ever know the difference, I don't think. So, rip Peter Sallis. Hopefully, Wallace and Gromit's good stuff. Coming to Netflix, also, by the way, so you'll be able to watch it at home whenever you like. One more feature to talk about, Andy. What do you got?
So this just came out today. It's a new A24 feature called The Legend of Ochi, which is about this young girl who they live in like this kind of, it's like a Scottish village or something, and they're warned, don't go into the forest. There's these creatures out there, and they like have to train to like run and fight these things. And she discovers a baby version of the Ochi and befriends it, and they kind of run off. And there's a whole chase after them. It reminds me a little bit of like something like E.T. or Disney's Brave. That kind of, these are our enemies, and then it turns out they're not really. The trailer looks real interesting. I honestly thought it was a lot of AI, and apparently it's not. They use a lot of miniatures and things. It's been controversial even today. This looks interesting. I'd definitely like to see a more full trailer.
Yeah, I've been seeing that too, the AI connection. It's written and directed by Isaiah Saxon, who we don't know. We haven't watched any of their films, but they've mostly done music videos, and they've mostly worked with artists like Bjork. So they're already doing abstract, like visuals, strange things, and this one checks all the boxes. It looks so weird, and it kills me that people think it's AI. Somebody had a great tweet about it. They were like, imagine working on a film for this long, and then it comes out, and people immediately assume it's generated by artificial intelligence, like nightmare kind of stuff, right? Like for all the work you put into making something look great. And it does look unique in that way. It does look like its own thing. Legend of Ochi, man. Keep an eye out for it. When's it come out?
That's in March.
Oh, we got time. Thank God. Cool. Dude, it's going to be a wild holiday season. I'm excited that there's so much good stuff coming out. If you want to, keep up with it, maybe if you can't catch all these movies, your boys at Off Script are going to be watching them. You keep it right here, and maybe subscribe. We'll keep an eye on it for you. We'll let you know when we watch these movies and come back to them. But for now, we're going to talk about one more movie on the podcast. I'm going to be taking a summary on this, so please excuse my clumsy delivery. The movie is The Apprentice. So, The Apprentice is the story of a young, up-and-coming real estate investor named Donald Trump. Right? Hot out of New York. His dad, Fred Trump, is obviously a successful businessman. And our young Donald meets a lawyer, Roy Cohn, at a party one evening, who he finds himself uniquely charmed by because Roy Cohn is a powerhouse, right? He takes no shit from nobody. Roy Cohn, played by Jeremy Strong, is a bit of a figure for Donald to look up to, and Donald, played by Sebastian Stan, very much takes the opportunity to learn everything he can from Roy, hopefully help his dad get out of some trouble with the feds regarding some recent rental opportunities or missed opportunities at their apartments. And along the way, they kind of develop a relationship, Donald and Roy. Roy teaches Donald about his infamous 3 rules of winning, and from there, Donald kind of takes the mantle as the Donald Trump that we know today. The movie stars Sebastian Stan, Jeremy Strong, and Maria Bakalova as Ivana Trump. It's directed by Ali Abbasi. It's been making headlines this year because of its subject matter, who it's about, and the fact that we're in an election year. There have been various figures, I should say, decrying the movie, including Donald Trump himself, who says it's not an accurate representation of him. Director Ali Abbasi, meanwhile, says that it is not exactly accurate, right? It is a bit of entertainment, and that he thinks that it's not quite as divisive as people say. But we've watched it. We saw it in theaters. Now I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, what did you think of The Apprentice?
So when we were approaching this weekend and we were going to watch Saturday Night and The Apprentice, I expected to like Saturday Night more and The Apprentice to maybe be a bit of a chore, but it turned out to be the exact opposite because I was kind of glued to The Apprentice from the beginning. The style, it's shot in this very grainy way, not quite 4:3 ratio, but we get this fascinating portrait, and I didn't. There's a question of like, why would I want to watch this, whether or not you support Donald Trump or not? It's kind of it's a good question. But Ali Abbasi has done a great job of kind of humanizing the figure. At the beginning, we get this person that's very not confident. They want to break into kind of these bigger circles. Meets Roy Cohn, takes him on as the the aforementioned Apprentice, and you see this person. It's a very Faustian, lose their humanity, lose become a monster, become the devil. I've been saying that this is kind of a Frankenstein story in a lot of ways. I think it's done purposefully. It's also very strong thematically, because I think it's not an indictment of Trump himself as much as it's an indictment of the American dream, of communism, of corrupt government, of patriotism, all these kinds of things. Like, he's saying a lot about a lot of different things, not just the political figure. And I think that, man, this is how you should do biopics. It should, like, you should still be trying to say something, not just tell the story of a person we all know.
Yeah, I'm impressed at how grounded The Apprentice manages to feel, because its characters are so lofty in society, right? Like, Donald Trump is obviously a former president. He is currently running for president. You know, everybody has seen a lot of this man over the last 9 or 10 years. That's assuming you weren't keeping up with him before when he was building casinos and hotels, right? Like, he was a big New York figurehead. He obviously has a lot of property in Florida, like larger than life kind of personality. And I went in knowing very little about Roy Cohn. I've heard him called like the most evil lawyer in the whole world, like the devil incarnate, right? Like, I've heard terrible things about this man, but I didn't know anything about him. I was like, you know, I want to go in fresh. I think that's probably the best way to go on this movie. I don't want to Wikipedia these people. And the movie also manages to portray this man as functionally a grounded individual. That's what's so impressive, that like, for these characters that are so big, Apprentice manages to make them feel so uniquely human. It manages to almost like draw a little empathy from you, the audience members, for these people. Young Donald is surprisingly innocent, surprisingly soft, right? Like, which I think not a lot of people expect. Additionally, Roy Cohn has a softness to him that you gotta get to see a little bit, that was not shown in public, right? You get to learn a little bit about his personal relationships. And all of that's really interesting. Ivana Trump like gets a lot of screen time, a lot more than I expected. Maria Bakalova like really uses it as this kind of like doe-eyed blonde woman who doesn't really know the way things work, but like very quickly has to learn because of her relationship with her husband Donald and the kind of people he's tied up in. It's a combination of, I think, like the lo-fi presentation, like that 4:3 kind of screen ratio, as well as like a silly amount of film grain that does not hurt the picture. I actually like the film grain. In fact, later in the movie, I was trying to tell if it upgrades when they go to the 80s to almost like VHS scan lines. Like, it almost looks a little different than the open. Could be that way the whole way through. I'd have to watch it again to tell you for sure. And also like a lot of handheld makes this movie like feel uniquely like special. And its own. It doesn't feel like anything else. Watching it, I kept thinking of like Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street, and Wolf of Wall Street has so much more polish, and this like intentionally goes the other way. It feels grounded. It feels street. It feels almost grimy at times, and like that's so much more special than like just making a generic blockbuster biopic. Like, uniquely its own personality and presentation.
Yeah, I love the way it looks. It moves like it has this kind of pumping soundtrack that I really enjoyed. I'm gonna add it to my ongoing film soundtrack playlist on Spotify.
Yeah.
One thing that really sticks out to me is we got to talk about this performance by Sebastian Stan. Poor Sebastian Stan. He said in multiple interviews that he like has hundreds of photos and videos on his phone that he watches of Donald Trump from the earliest they could find, interviews from the 70s, 80s, 90s up to the present, to kind of trying to capture the essence. And he does a good job of like he doesn't do the voice. That's the first thing you notice. He's not trying to impersonate Donald Trump's voice. It's more of like the attitude, the mannerisms, the look, the bravado. And he doesn't start out that way. You know, he's very kind of unsure at the beginning. He's kind of like, I don't know who these big important people are. I'm just trying to break in. And then you see him slowly over the course of the movie adopt more and more of this attitude. And after a while, Roy Cohn goes from being like, oh, you know, I'm proud of you, boy. Like, I've taught you all my dirty secrets and you're great at it. And then he's like loses control and he realizes he's created this person that has taken all his teachings to heart and is being very successful. But he's also created a monster. And Sebastian Stan, I think, just doing the best work of his career in this, and it was really a toll. I mean, he had to put on weight, to put on 15 pounds, had to do like hair and makeup for long days, long shoots. But he's not doing a caricature. He's not doing a bad impression. He is slowly becoming the person we all know over the course of the film, and I think it's a really incredible performance. And I heard in an interview, Sebastian Stan was saying, he was like, Trump is funny. He's like, you look at his old interviews from the 70s, like he would everyone laugh on those interviews on late night and stuff. And even if you hate the guy, you still, like I said, like we were saying, Sebastian Stan does a great job of humanizing a person that we kind of know as a cartoon character now.
Oh man, you're teeing me up to talk about Jeremy Strong, which rocks. Sebastian Stan is incredible, and one of my favorite things about his performance is that he does not start as being some kind of like mocking Donald Trump. He actually starts the movie as a pretty blank page. Like the young Donald Trump in this film is pretty new to the world and just kind of figuring it out, and just has some of the influences of his father's empire. He lives in like a crappy apartment. Like he's going around collecting rent from people who don't want to pay it. Like, is not in a good place. And he grows over the course of the movie to start to slide into the person we know today as Donald Trump. He just starts to pick up some of the mannerisms. He starts, like, his mouth forms words and consonants the same way. He starts to do like the hand motions thing. It's impressive. Like, it's subtle. And like by the end of the movie, he's much closer to Donald Trump you know now. And that progression is baked into Stan's performance. He does a fantastic job. Meanwhile, Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn is incredible. I'm a Succession head. Like, I think Jeremy Strong absolutely should have got an Emmy for that show, probably more than one. He totally didn't. Here in Apprentice, like, he is doing, again, just like another level of work. Like, he is so into this performance as Cohn, who does not have a lot to go on. Like, I went looking for stuff about Roy Cohn, and like, I think research on him would be a lot more difficult than Trump. He didn't exactly go on late night. Like, you had to kind of really dig into who this guy was and the lifestyle he lived and who he was behind closed doors, which is even more challenging, to get this guy who's like this no nonsense, take shit from nobody lawyer who like presents raw power at all times and has these like kind of incredible 3 rules for winning that he like bestows to Donald over the course of the movie. It's fantastic. Like, the two of them are tremendous in this movie. And then, like I mentioned Maria Bakalova earlier, she's also a lot of fun. My girl needs more work. I like her a lot. Every time she pops up in a movie, I'm like, oh yeah, she's great. Like, I had no complaints about her. Like, the 3 of them managed to hold down this movie really tight. Like, it would not work as well, I think, with other actors and actresses. Like, they are kind of the beating heart of this feature.
Yeah, Jeremy Strong in the first half, he's stealing the show, and I almost, when I was watching it, I was like, is he going to kind of steal the show from Sebastian Stan? And he doesn't, because Sebastian Stan gets his time in the second half. But yeah, it's interesting when they first meet, because Donald Trump has this problem that they're being sued by the NAACP about discrimination in their of who they're renting to, and kind of through Roy Cohn's wheeling and dealing and backroom, basically bribes and blackmail, gets the lawsuit thrown out and dismissed. And this kind of kicks off everything. In an initial one, he's like, you don't know anything, kid. I'll teach you how it works. And he's got this great speech where he says, in sports, you're taught to play the ball, not the man. He's like, in real life, it's the opposite. You play the man, you go after him. There's always a guy in charge of standing in your way. You go after him, his family, his wife, whatever. Like, and it's a win at all costs attitude that Trump takes to heart. And as he becomes a higher profile person and is in the media, that's where he starts to adopt more and more of this attitude. And I was reading that they improvised a lot of these scenes, Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan, where they would just have a premise and they would just go back and forth until they kind of got what they really wanted from. So there's a lot of that, and it feels very kind of natural and organic like that. It's a fascinating performance.
Yeah, Strong is really big on like very little rehearsal. He's one of those actors, which has been a lot of articles written about him. Like, your mileage may vary, but it works great in this movie. Like, him and Stan just play off each other so good. They feel like friends in the moments where they're friends. They feel like adversaries when they first meet and they don't know each other that good. Like, and they kind of see this like exchange of power that they're beginning to have. Like, it's a movie that manages to feel like uniquely political and also like uniquely centered on the humans behind these figures that we know now. And like, that's impressive. Like, it's really impressive for a movie that, again, like is so low budget and so has so little money that they have to like start a Kickstarter to get a marketing campaign going for it, you know, like not easy to do. And Ali Abbasi, I haven't seen any of his previous work, but like I'd definitely like to go back and take a look because this is good stuff. It's a tight script by Gabriel Sherman, great soundtrack. I don't know if I have much more to say about it, Andy. What do you think?
I just wanted to talk about some of the thematic material I mentioned at the beginning of the review. Like, yes, this is a biopic. It's going to be about Donald Trump's life, but it's also about so many other things. It's about, you know, the American dream and exactly what it is, and apparently what you have to do to get it. Democracy is you see them invoke patriotism constantly. That they're like, well, we want this hotel built because New York City is the greatest city in the world. And we want the world to know it, and America's the greatest. Like, you start to see how like the political stuff comes into play. So that stuff is fascinating. One of the other themes about this, it's kind of about like the lack of male intimacy, like these people who are so close and wheeling and dealing, but they can't really be close to each other. There's a great moment where Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father, finally he's hard on him the whole movie, and then he finally softens up and he's like, you know, I'm proud of you, boy. Like, you've made something of yourself. You made the family proud and stuff. And Donald Trump's just like, oh, go try the escargot. It's great. Like, he cannot like say thank you, cannot like, you know, he's like, no, that would appear weak. Same thing between Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan. They have a very close friendship, and Roy Cohn says like, I love you, Donald, several times, and like he never says it back, never says thank you, never thanks him for anything. And so there's this it touches on that. In the meanwhile, like the AIDS crisis is happening in the background as well, because a lot of the story takes place in the 80s. So there's a lot of fantastic themes going on in this movie as well.
Oh yeah, and funny. I forgot. Like, it's
really
funny.
funny.
Even in like moments of tragedy, you get some good laughs. There's a great scene early when Trump is trying to get Cohn to take on his father's case, fighting the NAACP, and he like follows Cohn into a bathroom, and Cohn's you know, doing his thing, and he's like, I'm in here begging you, look at me, I'm in a bathroom, for God's sake. And then he like kind of looks over at like this bathroom attendant, and the camera whip pans over to it, and this bathroom attendant's like trying to just look like a fly against the wall, like, you know, don't pay attention to me. And then whips back into the scene, which is like really funny. Even like the presentation of Trump's brother, Freddie Trump, played by Charlie Carrick out of the UK, is like heartbreaking, but also funny. Like, he's like this failure of a drunk brother. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm the family failure. Like, sad, but like in its most cynical moment, I think funny. And that's what I think The Apprentice does best. Like, just like Wolf of Wall Street, the Scorsese picture. Like, I think people who praise Donald Trump as a titan of industry and somebody who's done so much and has so much vision, as somebody who's, you know, kind of a hero, I think they will see that in this movie. They will see him as this kind of like hero character who came from relatively small beginnings, I think, for what the picture's presenting, and it really made something of himself, right? Like, really grew and built casinos and hotels and has done all this. And then for people who vilify him, they will see that side, and they'll say, look at this person who maybe started as a bit of a golden boy and became almost like a supervillain, right? Like, I think the movie manages to walk that line. I also think that's part of the reason it's not exactly crushing it at the box office. I think people have already decided what they think of Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this movie is going to change any hearts and minds. And in that way, I think Abbasi's right. It's not supposed to. I don't think this movie is supposed to sway your opinion on who Donald Trump is or where he comes from. Like, if anything, I think it's just kind of a fun ride to watch from the artist's perspective.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And Sebastian Stan was asked that question. He like, who is this for? Depending on, you know, what side of the aisle. And, you know, he had a great response that says, you know, everyone wants to be told how to think, and the only one that can make that decision is you. Like, in other words, go see the movie and decide for yourself.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's a larger indictment of like kind of capitalism and patriotism and just kind of win at all costs, the real cost of the American dream. Like, it's criticizing so much about our modern day lives, not just the character.
Yeah. Andy, would you recommend The Apprentice?
I would encourage people to have a really open mind about it. It's not the kind of movie that you maybe think it's going to be about. Fantastic performances from Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump and Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn, and the great Maria Bakalova as Ivana Trump. She's not in the film a ton, but she makes big impact while she's there. Fantastic score as well. This was a big surprise. I highly recommend this.
Yeah, I'd recommend it as well. I'd probably say streaming. I don't think you got to kill yourself to go see this in a theater. But yeah, when it shows up and you see it on a streamer, check it out. It's 2 hours. It's a fast 2 hours. It does not feel like 2 hours. Like it moves quick. Surprisingly, like cathartic, emotional when it needs to be, funny. Like Apprentice is a good time, dude. Like I would recommend. It's a surprisingly good movie. Oh my gosh. And with that, that's the episode. A bit of show news, I should say. We talked about this last week, but I just want to make sure those in the back catch it. I am going to be out for the next couple weeks. So we're going to take a 2-week hiatus on Off Script. Long time, I know, but it's a much needed vacation. We're going to the Northeast. Me and Chris are going to travel around, hit Boston, do a little hiking, maybe go up into Canada. Really excited about it. When we get back, Andy, what are we watching?
So a lot of releases coming out here at the end of October, but we're going to be taking a look at We Live in Time, which is the rom-com dramedy comedy starring Florence Pugh.
Florence Pugh. It's the end of the show. It's fine. We just talk about movies for an hour. On everyone. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're fine.
Florence Pugh and Andrew Spider-Man.
Oh my God, me too. Yeah.
And
Garfield.
Also,
Garfield.
Andrew Garfield. Oh man, we've lost our professionalism. Venom: The Last Dance is also coming out October 25th. Where we'll be taking a look at that, which also stars Tom Hardy, and just some FYI releases. Azrael, which is kind of a short horror film that stars Samara Weaving, comes out on October 25th on Shudder. If you're some other things, Smile 2 comes out this Friday, October 18th. Conclave, the religious Vatican drama, comes out on October 25th. And Honora on October 29th. We're going to have to catch up on all those, but we'll be back with We Live in a Time and Venom: The Last Dance.
Yes. Planning on being back on Wednesday, November 6th. So mark your calendars. A couple weeks away. If you enjoyed the show today, Off Script episode 271, I think is where we're at now. My gosh. The best way you can support us is to subscribe to the show on your favorite platform of choice. If that's on video, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, where we're uploading individual reviews, shorts, all the time. Big things going on YouTube. Come sub over there. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the usual social media places. You can follow us there as well. Our audio listeners are on, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartMedia, Amazon Music. Love you guys. You can follow us there as well. You can leave a rating and review also. It'd be a big help. Just 5 stars. 5. Just casual 5. Just casual 5 stars for your boys here at Off Script. Of course, you can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com. And you can email us, correspond us directly at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. My gosh, what an episode. From all of us at Off Script, the home of Bolt Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.